Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Lisa Fazio. Lisa Fazio is an herbalist. She's an author, and she refers to herself as a folkloric witch. You can find out more about Lisa Fazio and her wonderful work at her website, therootcircle.com. Welcome, Lisa Fazio.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Lisa Fazio, you've just published a book. Will you share with our audience the name of your book?
The name is Della Medicina, the tradition of Italian American folk healing.
Now, Lisa Fazio, you refer to yourself as a witch. Now, in our culture, for many people, referring to a woman as a witch is an insult. Why do you call yourself a witch, and what does that mean to you?
I think in a lot of circles in our culture, it is no longer an insult. I think it has been historically. And I think recently, say recent meaning like the last 30 to 50 years, um, probably since around the 60s, 70s, the word has been reclaimed by a lot of people. The word witch has different meanings for different people, obviously. And there's different types of witches. But for myself, in terms of, as you said, being a folkloric witch, basically that means I'm a practitioner of folk medicine and magic. So the idea of witch in this sense is more or less an herbalist, or somebody who works with the various methods and tools of healing.
And in your professional opinion, what exactly is folk medicine?
Folk medicine is the medicine of the people. In Italian, it's called medicina popolare, which literally means the medicine of the people. So it's medicine, it's different ways of healing, as well as being in relationship with community and with the natural landscape that emerges from the community itself, from humans as well as the other beings that we are in relationship with. It's largely localized. It's not standardized. It is an art form. It is not, there's no external authority. So the practices come from a decentralized condition of being. So, and in Italian folk medicine, that condition, for the most part, was the village or the family or the neighborhood and family.
So your definition sounds very much like the definition of shamanism to many people. So in your opinion, what's the difference between folk medicine and shamanism?
Well, there's all different types of shamanism. So I think there's a lot of similarities. Um, the word shaman and shamanism is also a word that's controversial and up for debate because we know it originated in like Northern Asia. Um, so the actual tradition of shamanism with linked to that word came from a specific area. Now it's been used widely for a bunch of different traditions. But simply, yes, it's a similar practice.
Now, you your book is about Italian American folk healing. Will you share for our audience where did your ancestors come from and what is your connection to Italian folk medicine?
So my my father's parents were both Italian immigrants, and my nonna, nonna is the word for grandmother in Italian, was from a place in Italy called Benevento, which is in southern Italy in the province of Campania, which is about an hour east of the city of Naples in the Apennine Mountains. Benevento is known as La Città delle Streghe, which is the city of witches, because it's has a historical um, it has many historical legends about the practice of witchcraft. Um, so it's kind of famous for that. My no, which is the word for grandfather, grew up in Calabria, which is in the region of Italy that's in the toe of the boot. And so I grew up, I'm also half Irish on my mom's side, but I grew up in an Italian American enclave. So the city of Utica, New York, which had a very large percentage of Italian immigrants in the early 1900s, it had a greater percentage than New York or Chicago. So for some reasons I don't understand, it's just a small Rust Belt city, but a lot of Italians moved there. And so I grew up in an Italian American community.
Now, you mentioned that you practice folk medicine and magic, and you call yourself a folkloric witch. Do you practice witchcraft?
Again, depending on your definition of witchcraft, yes.
So, what is your definition of witchcraft?
Um, my definition of witchcraft is working with the structures of nature and the sacred and creating containers of alignment with the sacred. So it's kind of bridge building as well as uh, a channeling or a structure making so that the sacred can um, express itself. So that's a little bit different than some of our more contemporary, like neo-pagan ideas about witchcraft. This type of witchcraft is not about manipulating things or bending things to my will. It's about attunement.
You sound very much, we here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, I recently interviewed Matthew Wood, who calls himself a shamanic herbalist. So, and you have a big smile on your face.
Yes, he's my teacher and friend.
Okay, there you have it. Okay, because I was going to say you sound very much, your work sounds very much like the work of
Yes, it was it
Wood.
was it was really influenced. He was one of my major influences.
Right. Now, so your folk medicine, the Italian folk medicine and witchcraft that you practice is based on plants. So what are some of the common plants that you use in your folk medicine?
Well, I use a lot of the plants in the bioregion where I live. So I live in New York State in the Adirondack foothills. So we have kind of it's like a four season, high rainfall. It gets very cold, it gets very hot. So we have a specific ecosystem here. I use most of the plants that are here. Um, so including common plants that a lot of people might know, burdock, dandelion, nettles, hawthorne, um, plantain, goldenrod. I grow a lot of herbs, less than I used to, but I'm still growing a lot. So echinacea. I do grow Mediterranean plants as much as I possibly can. We don't have a Mediterranean climate here, so it's tricky. But I grow basil every year. I have to replant it every year. Parsley, oregano, um, Mediterranean sage, rosemary doesn't usually make it through the winter. We try. Mugwort, a variety of different species of mugwort, motherwort.
All right. So for our audience who may not be familiar with some of the healing properties of these plants, I'd like to go through these plants one by one and listen to your professional expertise about the healing properties of each one. Does that work for you?
Sure.
So burdock, you mentioned burdock. What is burdock beneficial for?
So, burdock is somewhat of an elixir. It's considered a digestive bitter. So, a bitter is anything that actually tastes bitter. Dandelion would fall into this as well. And a bitter taste, anything that tastes bitter, coffee's a bitter, will, even just the taste, even before you actually swallow it, will start to signal to your digestive system to increase digestive enzymes. So, burdock, as a digestive bitter, helps with digestion in that sense. Um, it's also considered an alterative. So in herbalism, alterative is a term that basically means that it's helping with elimination, um, and in the sense that it improves the metabolic function of the cells as well as our organs of elimination. So burdock has an affinity for the skin. Um, I could go on and on about burdock. I don't know if you want to go on to another plant. I don't want to take up all our time with one. Yeah.
All right, dandelion. Will you share for our audience what are the healing properties of dandelion?
So dandelion also, one of the main healing properties of dandelion is as a digestive bitter. So the leaf, the root, the flower. The flower more is used for things like making dandelion wine, which a lot of people um, have heard of, especially if you're Italian American. So mainly, it's also very high in multiple different vitamins. So it's a food. Both burdock and dandelion are foods.
And nettles, what are the healing properties of nettles?
Nettles are one of the most powerful superfoods that we have on the planet, in my opinion. So, stinging nettle, there's different species of nettle, but stinging nettle is the one that we use. And it is high in magnesium, it's high in calcium. It's so all kinds of nutrients that you find in other green vegetables, but like 10 times. So it's also a food. So it's like a green. You don't want to eat nettles raw because for those of you who might not be aware, nettles is called stinging nettles, particularly because it stings you. So when you touch it, it will sting. It emits a type of acid. It's got these little like needle-like hairs that if you brush against your skin, it will sting you. It's localized. Um, and in fact, the sting itself has been used externally for things like arthritis. So people will actually intentionally like sting arthritic knees or joints because it helps with the pain. Um, Nettles by some people is considered an adaptogen. So an adaptogen, that's another herbal word. An adaptogen is something that helps us to adapt. So it helps our bodies to adjust and create equilibrium during times of stress, whether it's stress from an illness or an exposure to something or emotional, neurological stress. Adaptogens will help us. Now, the one thing about a lot of adaptogens is that they're not usually good for long-term use because um, they bring your body to a place that it might not otherwise be, and long term, that can be depleting. The thing about nettles is, and there's people who would argue with me on whether or not nettles is an adaptogen. I think it is. The thing about nettles is it's so nourishing that you can use it longer than you can other adaptogens.
And with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. We're listening to Lisa Fazio, herbalist, author, and folkloric witch. We'll be right back. Lisa Fazio, you've been sharing with our audience about the healing properties of various plants. Tell us about the healing properties of hawthorne.
So hawthorn is largely has an affinity to the cardiovascular system. So the heart, we use leaf, flower, and berry. You can use just the berry. Some people just prefer to use hawthorn berry. Um, it strengthens the heart muscle and sometimes can be even used for asthma because it's has an affinity to this chest, the whole chest area of the body. So cardiovascular tonic, really.
And goldenrod, what are the healing properties of goldenrod?
So goldenrod is also a bitter, although it's a super bitter. I often don't add it to bitter formulas. The leaf is very bitter, but both the leaf and flower are great for seasonal allergies as well as cat allergies. So usually used in tincture form because of its bitterness. It's not something you're going to want to take a tea of. But you can even just chew a little leaf of goldenrod. Like, so here where I live, when goldenrod is in bloom, is the same time that ragweed is pollinating. And in fact, goldenrod often gets accused of being the cause of people's late summer, early fall allergies, but it's not. Goldenrod just happens to be blooming at the same time that ragweed is pollinating. And um, goldenrod is not wind pollinated. So that means there's no pollen in the air. It requires uh, pollinators, insects, to become pollinated. Ragweed is wind pollinated. So the ragweed pollen is blowing around and we see goldenrod. But goldenrod actually is a remedy for seasonal allergies. The other thing I use goldenrod for is external contusions, so like bruising, strains, and sprains. And usually I do that as a poultice, like some type of poultice or liniment.
Now, one of the most well-known herbs to many of us in natural healing is echinacea. What are the healing properties of echinacea that you work with?
So I use Echinacea purpurea. There's different species of Echinacea. Usually what you're going to find in the market is Echinacea angustifolia. Herbalists argue over this because there's a narrative that the only one that works is the angustifolia, but that has not been my experience. I use Echinacea purpurea. It's the one that grows the best here is native here in my region. I grow it in my garden. I use the root, leaf, and flower. You can solely use the root, but I usually mix them because that's what my teacher taught me. And I use it usually for as an immune stimulant. So Honestly, I use echinacea for everything. So there's an old idea that if you had a good relationship with a plant, it would do anything with you. So
Mm.
echinacea was one of my first plants, and it became what might be thought of as like my primary plant ally, right? It just became the plant that I never leave home without. I still don't. I've always got a bottle of it with me. I use it for almost everything. But its main uh, known qualities are for immune function. So if you feel like you're coming down with something, it's usually best if you catch whatever it is, like the first moment you notice that you might be getting sick is to take echinacea. It doesn't seem to work as well if you wait, and it doesn't seem to have much of an effect if you're like in the midst of sickness. Like if you've been taking it, like you started to get sick, you started taking it, it didn't really help, you got sick, it's probably not going to do anything. Um, the one thing that I've done that's worked is like stop it, take a break, and then like let the whatever it is, flu, cold, kind of do its thing, I would be using other things. Um, and and then like towards the tail end, start another cycle of echinacea, and that a lot of times will just really kick it out.
Now tell us about the healing properties of mugwort.
So mugwort is um has an affinity for the pelvic area of the body, uterus, um, menstrual cycle. That's one of its main uses. So it is very warming to that area of the body and is helpful for um, congestive dysmenorrhea. So congestive dysmenorrhea is menstrual cramping that's caught. So menstrual cramps can have different things going on as to why there's menstrual cramping. And one of them is what we would call in traditional herbalism stagnation. So where there's areas in the pelvis where things are not moving well. So there's some lack of circulation, and therefore there's a buildup, more or less, whether that's energetic or physiological. It doesn't really matter. So we're using mugwort to increase circulation in that area of the body. Because of that, mugwort is contraindicated in early pregnancy because it's considered an emmenagogue, and an emmenagogue is a word that means anything that brings on menstruation. So you obviously don't want to do that. But interestingly, it also improves fertility. And the reason it improves fertility is because it helps with the circulation in that area of the body. So, it's like, well, you shouldn't use it in early pregnancy, but also it can help if you're trying to get pregnant. And then obviously at some point you want to stop it. It's also a digestive bitter, and it's a warming bitter. So a lot of our bitters that we use for our digestion are cooling. So they have a cooling energy. And that can be problematic if somebody's got a cool constitution or has a a cold condition. So mugwort can help give us that bitter quality and at the same time not be cooling. So it's a warming bitter.
And
And
tell
sorry.
and tell us about the healing properties of motherwort.
So motherwort is often confused with mugwort. So you want to make sure that you're checking your Latin binomials. So uh, that's because let's see, mugwort is also sometimes called motherwort, but mugwort is Artemisia vulgaris, and motherwort is Latin name is eluding me at the moment, but I know this one by heart, but I can't think of it.
It,
Oh, Leonoris cardiaca. And you'll notice that the cardiaca part is in it. And one of the things that motherwort is good for is specifically menopausal related heart palpitations. So where there's like a hormonal element to it. We use motherwort a lot in menopause. It is also considered an emmenagogue. So it has an affinity for the uterus, but also contraindicated in early pregnancy. So hormonal type stuff we use it for.
Yeah, fabulous. Now, Lisa Fazio, as you and I both know, and as a medical intuitive healer, one of the things that I do is I go through people's natural remedies and look at, this works, that doesn't work. So all of these herbs that and plants that we're talking about have very powerful healing properties. So all plants are good, but not all plants are good for everybody all the time. So you are an herbalist, and there's many ways to consume herbs. How do you recommend people can take their herbs?
Well, it depends on the person. So it's the same. It's not herbs are for everybody and not every preparation is for everybody. So the first thing that I do is look at what what people's lifestyles are like, right? So what people have access to. I've worked with people from all walks of life. Some people don't have working stoves in their kitchen. So um, the easiest, simplest way to take herbs is tinctures. It's the most cost effective, the most concentrated, the most shelf stable. So, one of the issues with tinctures is that a lot of them are alcohol. They're usually alcohol based. So people who have issues with alcohol, can't always use tinctures. Some people can, some people can't. The alternative is what we call glycerites. So it's basically a tincture made with vegetable glycerin. Um, Vegetable glycerin isn't going to extract the same properties that alcohol is going to. So it doesn't work for everything. The other way, and probably one of the most traditional and ancient ways of using herbs is as a tea. So water is considered the universal menstruum, meaning that a menstruum is anything that can dissolve or um, extract or suspend the chemical properties of a plant. So alcohol is a menstruum. Water is the universal menstruum. So a tea is really one of the oldest ways. But that means people have to make tea. So, and I love to recommend making tea. Just the act of making tea can be healing sometimes,
Hmm.
especially in a busy life, to um to take a moment to put some herbs in a tea ball and boil water, and sit down with yourself with a cup of tea, regardless of what's even in it, can be immensely healing. But not everybody is going to do that. The other way, and probably equally as ancient of a way of taking herbs, is in food. And that was really the first way that I learned about herbs, from my very first herb teacher back in 1992. Her name was Sue Cross. And she was just a local self-taught herbalist who taught me, um, just open up your spice cabinet, and that commonly Americans and Western people have a spice cabinet full of stuff that just collects dust. And so we just started using literally cinnamon and basil and some of the herbs that we had in there, and just start adding things to your food.
Great,
Um,
great insight. Now, I'm 65 years old, 31 years experience in natural healing. When my clients want herbs, I generally refer them to a company called Alchemy, Alkeni. And they have a wonderful website, alchemy.com. And they have a lot of information. It's like an encyclopedia of all the information about the herbs. And their herbs are alchemically processed. Are there any particular companies that you recommend that people get their herbs from?
so the main place that I recommend is Woodland Essence, and I recommend Woodland Essence for a few reasons. Kate Gilday who's the owner and founder of Woodland Essence, her and her husband, Don Babineau. She was my lifelong teacher. I was her apprentice for decades. I kind of still am. Um, and I worked for Woodland Essence, so I know how they make everything, and I know that it's optimal quality and that they have a lot of integrity. So that's my main one. The other one I recommend is Healing Spirits Herb Farm, Andrea and Matthias Reisen. So I would say those two, they are New York State. I do try um, to source herbs as locally as possible.
All right. So the two companies you recommend are Woodland Essence and Healing Spirits Herb Farm, and I recommend Alchemy, which, and I've studied with them in person. They're totally awesome herbalists and alchemists. And
Oh, just one other one, like it's a bigger one, but I just know the quality is really good, is Herb Farm.
Herb Farm, yes, Herb Farm, yes. Okay, and with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors. You're listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. We're listening to Lisa Fazio, herbalist, author, and self-acclaimed folkloric witch. We'll be right back. Lisa Fazio, I love that you talk about using medicinal herbs in our food. And this is such an easy thing to do because you're going to eat and you might as well spice up your food. And if you know what you're doing, you can do it even better. And many of us have kitchen gardens where we grow our own herbs. So now let's talk about some of the herbs that are commonly used in food. What are some of the healing properties of basil?
So basil is an amazing, it's just one of my favorite plants. It's got an amazing taste, so there's flavor. It's also known, which a lot of our cooking herbs are known as antimicrobials, so they can be used to preserve, in a sense, um, meats in particular. Basil also is very warming to the digestion. So that's the other thing with a lot of our cooking herbs is that they help us digest our food.
So tell us about the healing properties of parsley.
So, um, parsley is also going to help with digestion. It helps with bladder function. It's can be cooling, like if you have a cold, it can be opening to the lungs. High in vitamins.
Right. Really helpful for the urinary system, right? Yeah. So I can remember years ago, I had a client and he had hepatitis, which is inflammation of the liver. I helped him get over horrific hepatitis. And among other things, when he would come for sessions, I would cut parsley out of my garden and give it to him to use in his smoothies and make tea out of to support his detoxification. So tell us about the healing properties of oregano.
Oregano is all the same, in terms of digestion and stuff, but oregano is also antifungal. So um, a lot of times has been acclaimed for its use with things like candida type infections.
Right. Yes.
So it's also just gonna help all of them really are gonna help balance our digestive flora.
Yes. And along with that, tell us about the healing properties of olive leaf.
Oh, olive. So, well, olive, we use olive leaf as well as the olive, the actual olive fruit, and olive oil, which comes from the fruit. So olive leaf actually has similar properties as echinacea, except this is one of the things I like better about it. It's more immunomodulating, so it's not a stimulant. So sometimes with immune stimulants, folks with autoimmune conditions can be very sensitive. It can actually cause an autoimmune reaction. Olive leaf is considered an immunomodulator, so it's less likely to have that kind of effect. The idea of a modulator is that it's going to modulate, meaning it's going to create equilibrium instead of doing, if there's low function, it'll bring it up. If there's high function, it'll bring it down. So, olive oil itself is an elixir. And in Italian culture, we literally drink spoonfuls of it and like cook with it and put it on everything. But it's antioxidant, lowers cholesterol, um, just really an elixir of life.
An elixir of life. Yes, I even use olive oil on my skin
Yeah,
sometimes. Yes, for
yeah.
sure.
It's inside and out with olive oil. It's great on your scalp. It's great for your hair.
Yes. Now, and I see as we talk about olive leaf and olive oil, that brings a huge smile to your face. So tell us about the healing properties of sage.
Well, so I use culinary sage, and it can also be used similarly for fumigation. Oh, also mugwort's another one for fumigation. Rosemary is another one. So we didn't mention that as an herbal preparation is we use it for incense or smoke for purification or blessing.
Right,
Um, so sage, that's one of so Mediterranean sage um, can be used that way. And then sage is great for balancing like the oils in the body. So not so much water, but so sometimes when we're dry, it's it's not just because of lack of fluid or dehydration. It can be oils. And a lot of times this happens in menopause. So sage is a great one for menopause and like balancing that dryness with some juiciness.
right.
And also great for digestion, antimicrobial.
Yes. And you mentioned burning sage. So in my healing room, I have a little tray where I can burn sage, which clears out negative energy, and Palo Santo, which brings in beneficial energy. So that's a, massive overstatement. But we do know that if you've got mold in your environment, for example, that burning sage can help to clear out some of that mold, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So tell us about the healing properties of rosemary.
So rosemary is very, very clearing to the mind. It's great for digestion, of course, and it's a cooking herb. But the thing that's really great about rosemary, we know it's like one of its claims to fame is memory. And that is because it's like it kind of opens and warms, so it's got this expansive quality, but it's not a stimulant. So not like coffee. Now, some sensitive people can feel stimulated, but it's not a nervous system stimulant. So it's like you have a low point during the day and you don't want caffeine. Um, and so you can have a little bit of rosemary tea. I definitely recommend people start slow with rosemary just because it's very strong. So I usually try to mix it with other things.
And a use for rosemary that I've used over the years, if I am doing a healing with a person where I'm clearing out negative spiritual energy, a lot of times I will send them home with some fresh rosemary, get them to boil it, and then get them to take the rosemary tea and put it in the bath, and it
Yes.
clears out negative spiritual
Yeah.
energy.
So I do, we do that with, I'll do basically the same thing. make some rosemary, like it's an infusion on the stove. And then I just pour like final rinse, like after for myself, like after I've washed my hair and everything, final rinse just with rosemary. It's
Right.
also great for hair growth.
Great for hair growth.
Yeah.
So clearing negative spiritual energy and stimulating your hair. And there's no discussion of Italian herbs without a discussion of garlic.
Yeah. I was wondering when you were going to ask me about
Yes.
garlic. I've been waiting for that one.
Yeah, so tell us about the healing properties of garlic.
So, again, garlic, so it's iconic, very similar to, I would say, olive, completely different than olive. But garlic has, in terms of the magical properties, is what we consider apotropaic. So it wards off evil. That's the definition of apotropaic. So we use it externally in cloves, right? So you'll see um, people hanging garlic literally from their necks. So like during the pandemic, I was making little necklaces with just thread and cloves of garlic to wear out, which my children wouldn't wear. So, um, but so we use garlic just energetically, similarly to rosemary. Um, the medicinal properties, it's a very powerful antibiotic, antibacterial. We don't really consider herbs antibiotic, but it's an antibacterial. Um, and it is used for things like bad infections, like pneumonia. Now, the thing about garlic is that it is considered hot and dry in the fourth degree, which people probably don't know the degrees, but the fourth degree is like the most strong. Fourth degree plants are poisons fall under this category. So garlic is a very, very strong plant that works in part because your body sees it as a poison because it's so strong and it elicits a eliminatory response, which is a normal function of the body when it comes in contact with a poison. So, and this always gets me in trouble because I know we love our garlic, but and everybody's got their own way of using garlic and their own relationship with it, but the way that we use it generally in the US is way too much. And in a lot of Italian cooking, it is not used like that. In fact, a lot of times they'll just put one clove of garlic, like say in the sauce, and then the clove of garlic is actually taken back out again. So the way that we use it here um, is a little bit extreme, but some of that's cultural.
Right. And it's not like over Americans to overdo anything, is
Right.
it?
I know. Of course not.
Yes, everyone in the rest of the world, all our other global listeners are going to be rolling their eyes. Now, Lisa Fazio, what is benedicaria? Did I say that
Yeah,
right?
benedicaria. Benedicaria is actually an American word, Italian American word that describes the tradition of Italian folk medicine as it exists in the Italian diaspora in the United States.
All right, Italian folk medicine. And final question, Lisa Fazio, if there was one thing that you want people to understand about Italian folk medicine, what would that be?
It's not, the one thing is it is not a standardized tradition. It's a folk tradition, which means that it has many iterations and it's going to be different from place to place.
Right. So an Italian American folk healing might be different from back in the old country.
Absolutely.
Yes. So you've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. Lisa Fazio, will you share the name of your book again for our audience?
Yep, it's Della Medicina, the practice of Italian American folk medicine.
And you can find out more about Lisa Fazio and her wonderful work at her website, therootcircle.com. And remember, in the world of natural healing, there's therapeutic plants all around you, and you can even grow them in your garden and include them in your cooking. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.